I want to get into what the scientific consensus or archaeological consensus is on why the pyramids were built, what they were used for. But as far as you're concerned, you said something kind of crazy, which is you think they were electron harvesters. I don't even know what that means. But since we're talking about coal and electrons, what the hell are you saying? Well, let's start. I just want to start with questions because I love it. I have my point of view on the pyramids, and then listening to you, it's just fascinating. But for me, the pyramids were always just tombs for the pharaohs, right?
Yeah.
And you have a different point of view on that.
Yes, and that point of view, I held the same point of view that you had for many, many years, but I'd always been fascinated with the pyramids, and then I had the opportunity to gather a couple of books and start reading a little bit more about the Great Pyramid, and that's when a lot of questions came to my mind. Because the conventional theory, in my mind, did not actually fit the evidence. So, that's what started me off on my path was a certain amount of skepticism on what I had been taught, and then trying to figure out if there was an alternate use for the Great Pyramid, and if there was, what was it for? And that. That has pretty much shaped my path in life ever since.
What do you think they were for? What is that? That's probably the biggest question.
Yeah, first of all, my mindset at the time was that what I was looking at was a structure that was built supposedly about 4,500 years ago in the Fourth Dynasty. And it had a precision, an extraordinary precision that was not required for modern buildings. So, when you go back that far and you start seeing all these very, very precise collection of stones, they had to have been shaped to within, some of them to within 5,000ths of an inch, or maybe the thickness of a thumbnail.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And they're massive stones, yeah?
Yes, some of them are really big. Some of the largest ones you don't really see on the outside. They're contained within the structure itself. And so if you want to look at moving very, very large elements and taking them up to a level of about 300 feet. You go up to what they call the King's Chamber, and what you have there is a collection of granite. That's a hard igneous rock. It was quarried 500 miles away down the Nile, and then it was brought to Giza, elevated into the structure, and assembled in the shape of a room, but there were 5 extra layers of beams above this room. So there's a lot of anomalies within the structure that cause you to question, well, why were they doing it that way? What was their objective?
Well, let me ask you before that, is it still a mystery to us as to why, or I'm sorry, is there still a mystery as to how they actually accomplished this, or do we have a pretty good working theory?
I don't think we do. I think we have theories, but I don't think we have a good working theory. There's all kinds of proposals and theories about how they moved the blocks, whether it's on sleds, on rollers, floated down the Nile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have a variety of opinions on it, but all of the experiments that have been performed to try and explain even the building of a small pyramid, they had to resort to using modern tools and machines to put it together, but those modern tools and machines did not appear in their documentary.
Yeah.
Uh, and, so that's kind of like the sleight of hand that we've been dealt when it comes to trying to understand our history and how the pyramids were built and what they were used for.
It's just amazing to me. How long do you think it would take modern day man with all of his machinery to build the biggest pyramid that stands today in the exact same dimensions and everything? Do we have any idea?
I don't think there is a good idea. It depends on what it depends on what methods of cutting, hauling, and assembly that you decide you're going to use. So today, at least in terms of quarrying and cutting, we have mega machines that can perform those kind of tasks, and they can chew through granite and limestone fairly quickly. Uh, so that's like a quantifiable number that you could calculate if you went to work on it. The 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 hauling and the assembly of it, putting all the blocks into position with exacting precision, that's another matter altogether.
Yeah. I mean, especially, it seems to me what you're really saying is there is a lost technology here, because to get those massive stones to be, I went to the Wailing Wall and you see giant stones, but it's still it's a rudimentary wall. There's a lot of imperfections. When you see these pyramids, and I've never been to them, but
Right.
obviously you see pictures, but I can understand the fascination, because you go, hold on. Number one, these are the most impractical, very difficult structures to build. Number
Right.
two, they're so precise. So whoever was cutting these massive stones had tools that were either electrified, or there was some. You're an engineer. How does
Right.
one do this? How does one do this with a tool that's not harnessed to the electromagnetic field? I mean, how do you do that without alloys that can cut through rock?
Right.
I mean, how do we do you sand it? I don't even know what to say about it.
Well, that's where, there are like two schools of thought now, Brian, and that is, on the one side you have the lost technologies crowd that believe that there were tools in existence in the remote past that no longer exist, and the tools were more advanced than what Egyptologists have described in their works. So that there is that school of thought. The other school of thought is that what we have been able to demonstrate, or what Egyptologists have been able to demonstrate, is that if you take sand and some copper, you can actually remove stone or material. So they've fashioned saws where they use this quartz sand, and then they just drag the saw back and forth and create a slot. Or if you want to demonstrate the drilling of granite using a copper tube, and then you affix the tube to a stick that's allowed to rotate, and then you put pressure on that, but you put sand in in the interface of the tube and the granite, and then it's the sand that actually abrades the granite and removes it. All these methods certainly produce results.
Yeah, this is William Petrie's granite drill core, right? There's the debate.
The famous drill core number 7.
Yeah.
I'm an Egyptologist bad boy when it comes to core number 7, because I put the cat among the pigeons. In 1984, I wrote an article for Analog Magazine, and it was called Advanced Machining in Ancient Egypt. And so at that time, I proposed that because of the features on the core, that the drill was advancing about 100 thousandths per revolution per Petrie. I mean, that's what he described. The methods that I came up with that would allow us to do that, because modern drills do not penetrate granite that quickly, or that rapidly, in terms of the removal of material per revolution of the drill. Um, the modern tools don't do it.
I mean, you would need a harder rock than the rock that you're drilling into, wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, I think what you have is I proposed that they were using some kind of sonic machining, where the tool was vibrating very, very rapidly, and they were using an abrasive. So it is kind of like it's a hybrid between what is acceptable Egyptology that uses a common material that was available, but it also introduces some high tech that they're not willing to consider existed in the past.
Well, I'm always surprised they're not willing to accept that, because I think that I tend to side with someone like yourself, because you are giving the human imagination the space it deserves. And there's one thing about human beings: they can do anything and more that you can imagine and you can set your mind to. It's just our potential is unlimited. So the idea that there were these technologies, or that there were ways of doing things that got lost, should not be a surprise to us. So you almost need a Christopher Dunn to come up with credible theories. Why not? There were people like yourself who were thinking this way.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because that kind of encapsulates my point of view and really my state of mind as I was writing my book. And that was that, eventually we hand off to the future generation, people who come up behind us, right? And so preparing my work to be continued by future generations, that's the state of mind I had. That we have we have advanced our science and technology in leaps and bounds over the past 100 years. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. Just the invention of the transistor and its use in devices that we have now.
Yeah.
And so I say in my book, I said, even though while there have been quantum leaps and advances of how electrons move within a device, the methods that we use to create those electrons or deliver the electrons to that device haven't changed in over 100 years. So we're still burning coal.
Yeah.
Oil,
I often talk about how revolutionary Morse's code was. The idea of passing electrons along a copper wire. That was the first time human beings were able, at least in recorded history, were able to get a message from point A to point B that didn't require walking, boat, wheel, or horse, right?
Right.
So it was very revolutionary. We had harnessed the electromagnetic field, and that's a very interesting point, though. We're still doing the same methodology 100 years later, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there are variations on it, and of course, there are greater efficiencies in terms of materials, advances in material science. So the turbines that we use, their life cycle is probably a bit longer than what the first turbines were. I mean, it all started with the steam engine, and driving a generator shaft. And now what you have are these massive turbines, delivering 500 kilowatts of power.
Yeah.
And throwing it into the national grid. So, but still, the basic element, where are they getting the electrons from? The coal that they quarry. There's a little snippet I have in my book, and I describe the amount of coal that was quarried in 2021. is equal to a pyramid 76 times the size of the Great Pyramid. So in 2021.
Wow. Wait. Say that one more time. What's the name of the book, please?
My new book is Giza, the Tesla Connection.
Yep. Giza, the Tesla Connection. By the way, already a firebrand. Already, look at that. That's already provocative. You're already provoking the other side. Ancestral science. There it is. That I can just see people going, here we go with Christopher Dunn again. But it's great. I love it. It's exciting.
No, I mean yes. I mean, I'm not well thought of by some of the peoples in the halls of academia.
That's because human beings, and especially academia, is hopelessly tribal, hopelessly petty, and very, very compartmentalized. And that's what they have. And if they don't, if you don't toe the orthodoxy, it gets pretty vicious.
Yeah, that's right. And I've never been a part of that. So I've always worked freely without concern for losing my job because I'm coming up with different ideas because that was my job.
Yeah, talking to academics sometimes, every time you ask them to step out of their area of expertise, I use quotes, is a little bit like talking to a politician when you start asking them uncomfortable questions about running again or whatever it might be. So I've talked to probably 500 academics, maybe less, but a lot. And I'm always shocked at how, I can't remember who it was, Vaclav Smil or someone said that most academics are living at the bottom of a well and they can only see their sliver of the sky and then they extrapolate from there. Yeah, that might be the problem with that.
I think that's most of us. I mean, I just wouldn't dump that state of mind simply on well,
academics. You're right. It's human, isn't it?
I think it's a human trait, yeah, for sure.
But you don't. I do feel like at least you're not constrained by this, and so that there's not. You're letting your imagination run wild, which I think in this case seems to be appropriate. Not always, but in this case it is. Right. So.
Well, yes. I mean, I think in order to shape the future, we have to understand the past, and to shape the future in a significant and meaningful way, we have to do things differently.
Yeah.
And if we want to do things differently, then we have to have the imagination to be able to accomplish that.
I interrupted you before that, though, because you were saying in your book there's a small snippet, and I'm sorry that I interrupted you.
Oh, I actually got it out. It was about it was the coal pyramid.
Oh, right. Yeah, say that again to me. Say that again. I want to hear that.
Yeah, in 2021, they quarried enough coal to feed the power plants in America for electricity, enough coal to build a pyramid 76 times the size of the Great Pyramid.
God, that's so much coal.
Can you imagine that?
God, the scale is just astonishing. That's so much coal. So let's jump for a second to one of your more controversial theories that I kind of raised my eyebrows. You're saying that and I want to get into what the scientific consensus or archaeological consensus is on why the pyramids were built, what they were used for. But as far as you're concerned, you said something kind of crazy, which is you think they were electron harvesters. I don't even know what that means. But since we're talking about coal and electrons, what the hell are you saying?
Well, I mean, basically, it's a different term to describe the generation of energy, or the generation of energy. We don't create electrons; they already exist, right? So we harvest them. It doesn't matter what method you use; you're harvesting electron. But in people's minds, the concept of a power plant has kind of like a negative connotation. They envision the smokestacks, or these nuclear power plants with steam billowing out of
with a bunch of liberals with signs outside.
Right.
Led by Jane Fonda, yeah.
And so basically, it is to kind of reframe it in a way. Mm-hmm. I hope it doesn't confuse a lot of people, but
you're saying these were power plants in one way or another.
Yeah, yes, basically they are energy devices, solid state harvesters of electrons.
That's really
And
interesting.
where do the electrons come from? This is the beautiful thing. It's the recent work, or actually, it's not that recent, over the last 10 years. Dr. Friedemann Freund, a NASA physicist, had been doing research on earthquake lights, and part of his research included the lab experiments where he demonstrated that if you put igneous rock under pressure, it doesn't take much pressure at all before electrons start to flow. And and so his further research on that, he identified some peroxide defects in the minerals in the igneous rock, and and these actually, when they are put under pressure, they'll shoot to the surface of the Earth. So essentially, he states quite clearly that we are sitting on a huge battery.
Jeez.
Under our feet, we are sitting on a huge battery, and all it would take to release those electrons is to put a little pressure on them. And so, that kind of I didn't have that information when I wrote the Giza power plant, which was my first book.
You didn't have that information, so you kind
I
of
did not. No.
So where the hell did you get your theory from?
I would describe it this way, Brian. It's like it was what I call a reverse engineering project. Okay, and it was basically taking this machine, and I describe it as a machine because it had the precision of the machine, only on a scale of acres, and the appearance of it when you look at the schematic of the interior of the Great Pyramid, it looks like a machine. It doesn't look like a structure or a burial tomb or temple or anything like that. It looks like a machine, and all the different elements within it. So that was my mission when I set out, was to try and find out what all these features were doing. Why were they necessary? Not just one or two, but every single one of them.
Can you describe some of the features that captured your attention? I mean, was it the shape, all these things?
Yes, the basically on the outside, you have the pyramid shape. Everybody knows that, and that is I describe that as a coupled oscillator because of its size and dimensions. It is an integer of the Earth's size and dimensions, and also it has a frequency, a natural resonant frequency that is a harmonic of the Earth's frequency, a little higher on the scale, obviously, but still a harmonic. That if you have those two elements, and when you talk about a coupled oscillator, essentially what that is, it's a small device that is tuned specifically with a larger device to vibrate in sympathy with it. And as long as the larger device continues to vibrate, then the small device that you have will continue to oscillate in tune with it.
Damn.
So,
and this was just your theory. What you were like, this could be a tomb, but it might also just be, because when you look at the diagram, Dylan just brought it up. It does look like it looks like levers. It looks like something's going on in there. It does look like a machine, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the inside and you start to study and try to determine what the shafts on the inside were doing, what their purpose was, the passageways, the grand gallery. You got a lot of different systems and subsystems within the Great Pyramid that functioned independently and also in unison to allow this energy to be drawn through the Great Pyramid and then directed to the outside. And then just recently, you've had some confirming evidence produced. There was a Russian paper that was published in, I think, 2018, where they had determined that electrons or electromagnetic energy, when it comes up through the Great Pyramid, it focuses on in an area that is right where the King's Chamber is, which I
So they've
actually,
done those studies. That's very interesting.
yeah, and so this is a study that was done, and all of this information now that's been coming in for the last, I don't know, 6 years or so. And I've been getting calls and emails. Well, what do you think of this, Chris? What do you think of this? And I've always kind of had well, it's too early to say. It's too early to
Yeah, yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
It's
then
very
finally,
intriguing,
it's
though.
like, huh?
It's so intriguing because it
Maybe.
sounds like the old orthodoxy, which was these are just tombs, just kind of falls short. That much work. And rather understated, by the way. The pyramids in their own way, as grandiose as they are rather understated in some ways. Like I can see the idea that you're going to do all of this for a tomb doesn't quite hold water. How many pyramids are there?
Well, they say in Egypt there's over 120, maybe more. They've got them in Sudan. I mean, they're all over the
But
world. They've got
wouldn't
a lot in China.
really
Yes. Yeah, there are a
in the
lot of
same
pyramids
kind
in
of construction?
that. I don't know. I haven't been there.
Well, let's
So
stick with the ones in Egypt.
right.
Why wouldn't you then? Wouldn't that beg the question then? If these were power plants and they were electron harvesters, you would probably have to find underground or something, some kind of a conduit that was moving those electrons to a certain part of the city or somewhere. Yes, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, that is a different aspect to it. Okay, so essentially, the way I describe the process in the book is that electrons are drawn out of the Earth, and then they come into the Great Pyramid, and then they are distributed by whatever means, the
Who knows?
imagination
Yeah, who
can come
knows?
up with. Right.
Yeah,
Because there's so much from that period that is now missing
yeah. Could have
that
been copper wire. Could have been whatever. Right? Yeah.
yeah, all you can do is speculate, use your imagination
Did they
and
have
speculate.
copper back then?
Yes,
They did.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
So
yeah.
so they had copper, and but the other metals, they claim that they didn't have a wide use of iron or steel and stuff like that. But I mean, there are some artifacts that have survived that show that they at least were using meteoric iron, if that's true. But as far as the tools or the machines that we use today to shape material, to make materials, we use a lot of cast iron, we use a lot of steel, hardened steel. And so when we start thinking about how they were able to machine the blocks, a lot of these very, very precise blocks, and the tools that they use there, and I move away from the more primitive methods where it's all handwork and rubbing, copper and sand on stone, because of not that you can't remove material that way, but there is another aspect to it, and that is the precision and the geometry of the pieces that you're making.
Mm.
So, everything, we are surrounded by manufactured artifacts, and they are all made in factories that are tightly controlled in terms of the manufacturing process.
But what is your working theory on why? Because you just mentioned geometry. Why a pyramid? What does a pyramid do for us here? Why make a pyramid when you could have made, I don't know, anything else, especially a block would have been easier.
Yeah, I think I think the Freund's work actually kind of Friedman Freund, the physicist, his work kind of gives us an indication of what the answer to that question might be, in that when the electrons are released from within the Earth and they shoot up to the surface, they seek the highest point. And he was able to determine this by studying areas, seismically active areas, using NASA satellites. And there was one particular area that lit up, and that was around like here in Italy. They had a huge earthquake, but days before the earthquake, the hillside around this town in the valley, they lit up with these earthquake lights. So basically, that's the theory. He was looking to see if he could come up with an early warning system, so that could save lives of material,
Sure.
And so, essentially, I read his work, and I was like, well, that is right on the money with what I'm researching and what I'm looking for, and it fits right in. And actually, it expands it greatly. So right now, I am at a point where, everybody wants to drive electric cars. Well, not everybody, but there are people who would like us to drive electric cars.
Yep.
But that's kind of like putting the car before the horse.
Yeah.
If you don't have
you still need the generators. You still need the coal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, right now,
unless we can build pyramids that work the way your theory would suggest. What is that? Why Tesla is in the title of the book?
No, actually, no. It's not. Though it is kind of a cool link, I think, to the Tesla Motor Company. And in fact, I was on Joe Rogan a few weeks ago, and I gave him a copy of both my books, Giza, the Giza Power Plant, and the new one. And I said, and he says, what are these for? I said, well, give them to Elon Musk. If he's going,
that's great.
If he's going to keep building electric cars, he might need some electricity.
Yeah, he might need some pyramids.
But, I mean, this is like it seems like such a logical idea that, if car companies are going to create all these products and sell as with, buy this, and there's no infrastructure to support it, it's kind of, well, do they have some responsibility? Wouldn't it actually work in their favor if they did?
Well, one of the things you hear with people who talk about the viability of electric cars is we need a breakthrough in material sciences, and we need it fast, because otherwise these batteries are massive. Otherwise, you're dealing with all the cobalt and all the things you've got to mine in the Congo. In fact, the carbon footprint of my Tesla, which is the smaller one, is I think bigger than an F-150. So even before I even drive it. So the idea is that that you create incentives to research a breakthrough in material sciences, a breakthrough in how to harvest electrons with techniques other than coal. And this is why, hopefully your work, I hope you're vindicated. I hope somebody, hey, we should probably compress granite and in a certain shape with a pyramid, and looks like Christopher Dunn was right, because this is I mean, it's somebody that this is how, think about it though, the science has moved forward this way. Theoretical physicists, theoretical mathematicians, and scientists in general have huge imaginations. They just do.
Right.
They're romantics. Right. They're romantics. Right. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I had a meeting with Friedemann Freund, right? Mm-hmm. He has, 300 papers out there on the internet that you can read. He's got a lot of scientific papers, and I said to him, I said, Friedemann, I really, really appreciate all the work you've done, and I've accessed your papers, and I got to tell you, the math is way over my head.
Yeah. Physicists, you're like, what do you even? It's just all these variables and equations and theorems. I mean, come on.
But you know what he told me? He said, Is that, oh, I'm not very good at math. I rely more on intuition.
Yeah. Boom. Bingo.
Oh, right.
And the
It's
math is a
exactly what
language.
you were saying,
Yeah, the
right?
math is a language. You learn the language, but the
Yeah.
I'm friends with a theoretical mathematician, and in so much of when he breaks it down for me without the theorems, which are very intimidating, it's just
Yeah.
beautiful questions. They're beautiful questions. There are good questions to ask. There are bad questions to ask. When you drop a pebble into a pool of water, you can measure with more accuracy the volume and frequency and height of the wave at point of contact in a much more
Right.
accurate way than as it dissipates toward the outer stretches. How do you measure motion? This is where Newton came up with calculus. It's pretty cool. So when you talk to theoretical mathematicians about math, they're like, it's the most beautiful science on the planet. It's a dream world. It's like, all right, okay, I guess so. I mean, I'm
Right.
envious that I don't have that room. Is a very dark room for me. I don't even have a flashlight for it. So
Well, it's quite math is quantifiable. Like,
yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of like that. That it would be your safe space. Certainly not having to deal with a room full of humans like a comedian.
Oh yeah, boy. That's for damn sure. So do you think that the pyramids glittered, had a reflective shell? Anything on that idea? Is there any evidence to that, or is that just your kind of like summation?
There's all kinds of imaginative speculation on how the pyramid was clad. Uh, some people think that there was a gold capstone on it.
Hmm.
Um, and people kind of wax romantically about how it would shimmer with light, from miles away. And just an awesome and awe-inspiring sight. And I have no problem with any of that. Particularly, I don't have a problem with the gold cap because in the Tesla connection, the gold cap is what I use because it's a combination of the work of Nicola Tesla and Friedman Freud. And that ties into, okay, so we have all these electrons rushing up through the earth and into the Great Pyramid, and then now what do we do with it? And so I proposed that they had a dome, like a Tesla dome, over the pyramid, and it was connected to the gold cap or a copper cap or some kind of metal, because uh, if you look at the Freund's lab experiments, he had a copper, I mean a granite block, a long beam, granite beam. On one end, he put it in a press, and then he ran a wire to the other end to a gold cap, and then in between he had an oscilloscope that so that he could measure the electron flow. Uh, and so there has to be some kind of handshaking going on,
Yeah.
uh, anode to cathode.
Yeah.
So that's basically the whole Tesla connection there. The
Wow.
other part, the other Tesla connection is actually deep under the Great Pyramid in the subterranean chamber.
Mm. So
And
there are subterranean chambers.
there's one, yes, one
Okay.
subterranean chamber that we know of, that is publicly known. There are, I mean, there have been reports that there's more under the Giza plateau than what is popularly known. But in the subchamber in the Great Pyramid, they had another Tesla device, which was actually modeled, would have looked like his earthquake machine, and that Tesla built this electromagnetic, or it was a hydro-mechanical device that he attached it to a beam in his apartment building, I think, and then just started rapping on the beam
Mm.
at a
Mm.
particular frequency. And on the knowing that all structures have a resonant frequency, if you start hitting them, and they resonate, and if you find the resonant frequency to which they would you could increase the amplitude with each strike. You could eventually take the whole building down.
Wow.
It's called destructive resonance, and the an example of that would be the Tacoma Narrows Bridge that was destroyed through destructive resonance.
Wow. So that's a real thing. That's a fact.
Definitely a real thing. Yeah.
Was there a body of water like the Nile back then? How far away is the Nile or a moving body of water from Giza?
Well, right now it's a lot further than it used to be.
But it used to be closer.
Used to be closer.
Yeah, you wonder at times, if there was.
Right. And they also, I mean, there's speculation too that around the where the Sphinx is, that there was a harbor in that area. So, what they call a harbor. That it does seem does seem to be, I think, a reasonable speculation when you consider a lot of the erosion that you see on some of the blocks.
Yeah. Well, the Sphinx, is that just decorative? Is that the consensus that the Sphinx doesn't play a role in this whole talk?
I don't know. I mean, as far as mechanical function,
yeah.
No, I don't think it does.
Yeah, that's right.
But it would have some meaning.
Yeah, it would have some meaning. Yeah.
And they say that at one time the head was carved like a lion, the body was like a lion, and then it was recarved to the shape of it. But so there's a lot of different ideas about the Sphinx. But in terms of its function in the grand scheme of things, you have works of art near all major public utility buildings, right?
Right. And is there any alignment that the pyramids adhere to that correlates with the cosmos? Is there any alignment that the pyramids adhere to is there some rhyme to that reason, or does it appear to be random?
Yeah, that is an area that I kind of stayed away from because I try to just keep it right down on earth in terms of trying to explain.
Yes, I'm glad I hear you, because you can get involved in this numerology. I mean, the cosmos is a pretty big place, and you can find your truth. You can find all different kinds of ways to do that. Let me ask you this. What is the rebuttal to your argument? What is it? Is it something as sort of drab as, well, they were just tombs. We don't know. It's a mystery. They probably did this, that, and the other thing, and they were, at the end of the day, tombs for the pharaohs. Open and shut case.
Yeah, I mean, there's been rebuttals. There was one rebuttal that said that the Giza power plant theory doesn't hold water, and that was basically because of the proposal for the use of two shafts that come into the Queen's chamber that I proposed. There were chemicals coming into that chamber and mixing and creating hydrogen. So there's that argument. Another argument was that because I referred to electricity. That's where you take a silicon quartz crystal and stress it across a particular axis, then you get electrons to flow. And the King's Chamber, from the sources that I was using at the time, described the granite as having 55% silicon quartz crystal in its matrix. And so I proposed that there would be some kind of electromotive flow from the granite in the King's Chamber. So there was that. There's been a lot. People just don't want to even consider it.
Why don't they want to consider it? They just don't feel like there's any evidence. It's just too much of a theory.
It is. Well, actually, it is. It's a work in process, though, Brian. I mean, it's not a fully formed. It's not been demonstrated.
Sure.
100%. It's like a continuing discussion.
But it would be very, very interesting if this physicist was able to prove that by if somebody ends up being able to generate significant electron harvesting and usage out of some kind of a pyramid structure using the ground that we're standing on, like you said, it could be a battery. That would be, that's very intriguing for your argument. I mean, it's a lot more supportive of your argument, and that's what I'm interested in. I want to know if there's if people are actually looking at that. It's an interesting idea. Why not look at it? Why not try that? Why not experiment with this idea? It very well could be. Guess what? We suffer from chronological snobbery. We tend to think that we started as these pointy, eared hominids, and then we slowly, achieved now we're at AI. I'm skeptical of that too. I think human beings knew a lot more than we think they did. And I'm sure technologies were lost. I'm sure aqueducts and all kinds of things these were cities, and people figured things out. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, that's basically what the way I left it in my book was that there are two things that to take away from that book. One is that it explains the Great Pyramid, how what it was used for, how it was built, to a certain extent. The other part is it describes a means of accessing electrons for our wonderful high-tech devices.
Yeah.
That is natural, clean, and would not damage the environment. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you don't want to consider it as applying to the Great Pyramid, then at least take a serious look at the other part where perhaps we can learn from Bryan and be able to tap into that energy that sits under our feet because we're going to need it eventually, obviously.
Yeah. Well, this has captured your imagination, and you've been writing about this and thinking about this for 50 years. That's
almost, yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, well, since 1984, really, right? So 40 years. But I would imagine before that, you probably had read some books on it too. But I mean, in earnest, you've been working on this problem and theorizing and arguing and,
Well, I was 33, I think, when I started this. I'm 78 now. So.
You look good, my friend. I thought you were younger than that. You got these pyramids keep you energized. It's the electrons, brother. It's right. That's what it is. How many times have you been there?
It's all the trolls.
Yeah, that's right. It's all the trolls. That's right.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of trolls still? Do you still have trolls?
Oh my God.
Really? Yeah.
You won't believe.
Of course. You get on Rogue, and they're probably telling you that they came from space aliens and all that.
Yeah. The Google scholars know everything.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah. I mean, it's been an interesting journey for sure.
Yeah. Well, you say, I mean, again, if you're going to write books like the acoustal energy, the Giza, the Tesla connection, acoustal science, and the harvesting of clean energy, people are going to be like, who the hell does this guy, what'd you say, clean energy? The hell is this? Subversive. Shackle him. Silence him. Silence this firebrand from Manchester who's lost his accent.
Right. I don't have a country anymore.
You don't have a country. Your country is Egypt, sir. It's ancient Egypt.
Going to be exiled to an island.
What was the first book you wrote on this, and how do they differ? Have you changed your mind over time?
The Giza power plant, that was basically, I started that in 1977. It was finally published in 1998.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, can you give us the when you say the power plant, and obviously this physicist comes along way later and says, hey, there might be something. Can you tell me again what the spark of genius was where you kind of went, maybe this is a power plant? What was the moment that gave you that idea? Where was that inspiration? How did that happen? What was the sort of aha moment?
Oh, yeah. I was actually had Peter Tompkins' book in my lap. It was Secrets of the Great Pyramid, and I was pondering the purpose of the Great Pyramid. I'd already kind of been, kind of formulating the idea that based on just economics and a return on investment, that if a society who is obviously extremely capable, very sophisticated, if a society would invest that kind of money, resources into such a structure, what were they expecting out of it?
It's a very good question. It's a very, very good rational question. You're right. I don't think people build these things necessarily out of superstition. Now, the Sistine Chapel would beg to argue St. Peter's Cathedral was 100%, inspired by the notion that there's a higher truth and a transcendent truth and all those things. And it was an homage. I think the Medicis, financed it, but it was also the capital of authority. It was also it was the papal authority. So it would also make sense. Right. But I think that's a very good question, because the Sistine Chapel, and maybe it's the difference between Egyptians and Italians, but the Sistine Chapel and its decorative power and its artistic inspiration. Whereas you're right, when you look at the pyramids, there is a utility to it. There is a martial utility almost. It's almost like, why in the world would they cut these massive rocks from 500 miles away? And they're so precise, put them in that particular order, in that particular shape. It really, you're right. It's insanely labor intensive. You would imagine they probably had to invest in putting an army into, and agriculture. And there's a lot of things that a society has to do.
Right.
Yet they dedicated all this manpower and all this time to building something. That's a very good question. I never thought of that, but I'm sorry that I'm kind of like echoing you here, but that's a central question that intrigues me.
That was actually the central question for me, the one that actually set me on the path to trying to determine, okay, how did it function? Okay, I was already looking at it like it's a machine. And so I was just like a mechanic, comes across a machine in the jungle, and he's like, okay.
It's your confirmation bias.
Well, it's my
everything looks like a machine to you.
That's right. Oh, everything I see is a machine.
That's right. That's right. Human beings, you name it. Yeah.
That's human beings. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. To a hammer, every solution is a nail, right?
Right.
But the thing is that, it's very flippant and easy to say, to pass that off and say, confirmation bias. You're a machinist, you're looking for machines. Naturally, you're going to see a machine in everything you see. And it's, well, no, not really.
Right. No, that's not fair. It's not fair. That's a very reductive description of your argument. And you've written 2 books on this subject. I got to tell you, I mean, I'm not one to choose sides here because I don't know enough about the pyramids and don't think about them enough, but I like your argument. It makes the most sense to me. It just does. Yeah.
Hopefully there's more people like you around and that have a few billion that could invest in building one.
Yeah, I don't know that that's how it's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have physicists, it might be ARPA, it might be DARPA, it might be some government agency that figures out, the Egyptians were onto something here. When you've got when you've got, I guess, a structure in this shape and it's made of this ratio of granite to quartz and you have this and that you can harvest electrons. And we are going to eventually get off coal. We are going to eventually have a breakthrough that I don't know why the hell we're not building more nuclear power plants, but we should, and we will. But saving that, the idea that we're not going to come up with another way to harness energy and electrons is naive. I'm sure.
And how do you unwind society and say, okay, we're going to unwind everything. We're going to start from scratch and do it differently.
Well, sometimes it's an accident, necessity.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
You can't do that.
No.
There's no way you could do that.
It's a very slow process. The diffusion of innovation takes a long time. It really does. You know, they use the example of scurvy. They had figured out that scurvy was caused by a lack of nutrition in one way or another. There was I think it's that was really in as early as I think the late 1400s or 1500s. It really took about 300 years for the British Navy to hear that and start packing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I have a very painful memory of a landing in New York and the natives there calling me limey.
I'm sorry I triggered you. Get in your safe room. Get your safe pillow.
I'm gonna go in my safe room now.
As if you don't deal with enough trolling, and I had to call you. I had to remind you of those limey days.
Yeah, the limey days.
That's right.
You know, there are people today, Americans, they don't even know what that means. I have to explain it to them, and then I regret afterwards that I do.
Wait, you just tell him you're from Manchester, and I think you're.
I'm from Manchester. Yeah. Oh, he's from Manchester.
Yes.
We'll give him a wide berth.
The sea is far. Yes, I wasn't a sailor. Well,
right. Let him have his fish and chips. He'll be on.
That's it. We were herders. It's great. Well, listen, I appreciate your work, and I really appreciate you coming on. It's a lot of fun, and you know, I've known Joe Rogan for 30 years, and I remember we had dinner probably 25 years ago, and he was like, and let me tell you another thing about the pyramids, and here's why aliens built them, and buckle up, because you couldn't find those stones for 500 miles. And he'd be shouting at me. I was like, oh man, dude, I don't care that much about pyramids, but because I couldn't make sense of it, right? But you know, this is what I appreciate about you is I get to walk around now and say things like this and kind of go, listen, I spoke to Christopher Dunn. These were the limey. I spoke to the limey, Christopher Dunn. These were pyramids. These were power plants. All right. So, Giza, the Tesla Connection. Pick up the book. I'm going to read it. I think it's great.
Well, you have a copy, right? Didn't?
No.
Brian
will send me one though. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to see him sometime this week.
I love that guy. He's great.
Yeah, he's a great guy. His brother's great too.
He was recommending you way before you did Rogan, by the way. Brian Booth was keyed into you 2 years ago. So you know he was.
Yeah, he came through Danville a couple of years ago, and we had a beer together. Nice guy, nice guy. Yeah, good family,
smart guy. Yep. Smart man. Christopher Dunn, thank you so much for joining us, and keep preaching.
Yes. Hopefully to the choir.
Hopefully to the choir.
Right now.
Here's to you being vindicated, which I think will happen eventually.
Posthumously, I imagine.
Nonsense, sir. Nonsense. Just go touch the pyramids and get some of those electrons. It's working for you.
So who died today? The limey.
The limey. He didn't have enough vitamin C. This is what happens.
Have enough vitamin C.
Scurvy. Scurvy got the man. And the trolls. The trolls and scurvy.
The trolls and scurvy.
Yeah. I can't believe you had a problem with my Manchester accent. I think it's not bad. This might be a bit more Scottish.
I think it's confusion of Irish and Scottish myself. Callen, is that Irish?
That's Irish. That's Irish. It's Irish. My mother, however, is a Sclafani, so she's Sicilian, and my father's side was Irish. So, yeah.
You know, my whole family, they're from Donegal Island, so my grandparents were native Irish people.
There you go. Good man.
Yeah.
Well, I knew I liked you. You're a good man. You have a standing invite. I look forward to. I might have you back on. I might have a lot of follow-up questions. So.
Well, yeah, anytime. I think I've enjoyed this conversation because it's been fairly light. You
Yeah, instead of them getting you. Well, that's what I wanted to do, because I wanted to have a discussion with people who are novices like myself and keep it, because I've heard you go down the rabbit hole. And I just, I like to keep this for the layman, for the novices like myself. This is just over the bra right now. This is a little foreplay. That's all we're doing. I can't go too deep. Yeah, it's fun to do. I appreciate it. So,
well, if you want to go to Egypt, I'm going to be doing a conference next April in Cairo.
Really?
Yeah, and it's going to be basically I'm engaging with Egyptian engineers and scientists who are now their opinions are turning around, and they're beginning to see their monuments in a different light.
Wow.
So even though Western universities are opposed to the idea, the Egyptians are not. Most of the Egyptians are not. Professional people, anyway.
April in Cairo. Never been to Egypt. It might be the excuse I need.
Well, it's you can bring your buddy Joe. You'll have a good time.
Yeah,
I've been there 14 times. It's a whole experience.
Yeah. How is your Arabic?
How is my Arabic? It's as good as my French.
I love it. What a great answer. I'm stealing that too. I got a lot of things to steal. This is great. Christopher Dunn, you do good work. You're a good man. We appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on Off Limits.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.